Welcome to the Legal Edge Coaching Podcast. This is your host, Trevor J. White, with
the other host, Shane Smith.
That's right. And we are here to wax profound, to give you the wisdom and light of our many, many vast years of experience in life. But the reality is, Shane and I have figured a few things out, and we know a few things about how to take a dumpster fire of a life. I won't even speak for Shane. I'll speak for myself. I know how to take a dumpster fire of a life that nothing is working, and you literally would look at me and call me the biggest loser in the world, to a life that is on fire and it's working and firing at every cylinder. And there's a lot that we learned along the path. I learned, Shane, you learned about this. And so, yeah, man, kicking things off, bro. How are you today? You just got back from a nice little vacay.
I did. And that's what I was, thinking about. You talk about your life was a dumpster fire. And I'm just looking at comparing the vacations, right, that I had just this last week versus, the vacations I had when I was deep in, I'll call it the pit, but the grind or when the firm was just crushing you kind of deal, that vacation and the quality of that vacation and the lack of fear that even though I'm not in the office, everything's burning down I had back then versus now when it's much more relaxed. You know what I mean? You're really having a real vacation as opposed to, a working vacation.
Well, dude, that's the hardest part is this, like, when you have to, it's almost like building the steps, right? Of you have to get to a place where you can actually take a real vacation. And it's easy to like kind of say that, but what I mean by that is same thing you're talking about is a real vacation is one where you can actually disconnect.
Right. It's a real vacation.
Where your firm, your world and business is actually stable enough that if you walk away for 7 days, it's not going to just burn to the ground, or revenue's not just going to immediately stop coming in, or your employees are going to make really dumb choices, and you're going to come back to all these problems and things that you're going to have to like now, and it's not an easy thing to build towards. It takes a lot of work to get into that space, man. Like, but you've done it because I know you've had plenty of vacations, as have I.
Yes, I discussed with my wife, because I'm in coaching, I'm in mastermind business groups as well, right? So that's one of the things I've had a coach for almost probably 80% of my legal career, legal time period. I've had a coach working on my business and all that. And I go to one and we go 4 times a year. And part of the deal this last year with my wife was, she's going to get 4 vacations too. I'm going to take 4 business trips. She's going to get 4 vacations. Now, 1 or 2 of those maybe with the family, but yeah, so I've been at 4 locked in this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you did that. I love that you did that just to like reiterate what it was that you did. Cause I thought it was brilliant, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to take time and invest in the firm, in my own knowledge, me as a firm owner. And then at the same time, how do you leverage this so that you don't just become this one dimensional guy? Right. It's like, well, okay, cool. Well, if I take this trip every quarter, let me just create a rule that if I take this trip, I also take a trip with the family.
And to be clear, they're not all mega vacations, right? I mean, right. I came in, grabbed my wife. I think we left on a Thursday night and I was back to work on Monday, right? So Thursday, flew down, did a day at Disney, a day at Universal, then flew back the next day. So maybe I left on Friday. I think I just did a straight hard weekend. I'll say hard weekend. Got on a plane at noon on Friday, flew back late Sunday night to my house or something like that. I mean, a little long trip, but it took my wife to Disney and Universal for a day each, and she had a wonderful time, right? That was, I was moving into it. But, this week, I know we were going to talk on getting back in the groove after you take a break or take a vacation. And, one of the things I learned this year was the scheduling of that trip with my wife should not be right after my business conference, right? It should be before. So go before, recoup, then roll into the business conference, then roll into work, as opposed to, I did the reverse one time this year, which was went to the business conference, got all fired up, was ready to rip roar and go. And then I step out for a week with my wife, which was, the opposite of rip roaring and going. It's, slow way down, be present with her, do her stuff, not talk about business 47 times a day. And then I get back and now I don't want to say I'm a deficit, but I'm certainly at a standstill, right? Like that momentum is gone and you got to revitalize and re-amp yourself up kind of deal.
Yeah. Well, dude, I think you just brought up a brilliant point, and I never even considered that until you just said it. and because I obviously knew you have been doing this, I've known you've been doing this all year, not even realizing, yeah, the logic behind, hey, let's go take this, let's go to a mastermind and get fired up, motivated, inspired, have this awesome action plan, and then go on vacation. Literally right after, it almost like it's almost like you shot yourself in the foot there. I didn't even consider that, which is wild because it was like you took all, it's like your racehorse and then you took the racehorse out to pasture instead of to the racetrack.
It was pretty brutal the first time, right? Now, like I was prepared the
Yeah.
second time, but because I already booked, right? Because like a lot of business people, you know, as soon as I get the idea, I got to book it and pay, right?
Hmm.
I can't wait till like 2 weeks before and then schedule it because something always, even if the business that runs smooth like mine, I'm always like, I got a lot going on, or I got a lot of stuff moving, or I really want to have this meeting one on one in person, so I'm gonna have to fly from
Hmm.
Charlotte. I can always find reasons not to go on not to go on a trip. So for
Yeah.
me to manage that, I have to book stuff, right? So I book airline tickets, I book hotels, I book tickets to the show or whatever we're doing. So I can't weasel out of it, right? I mean,
Yep.
you're stuck. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I think something's critical is making sure, and this sounds basic, but most people screw this up. I screwed it up a ton, is you got to have a plan,
yeah,
right? You can't, you have to realize that when I take my time off, I'm going to lose momentum. You can lie to yourself and say that it's not going to happen, but you're pulling yourself out of the fire. And it's critical. You need to pull yourself out of the fire, right? You stay in the fire too long, you get burned up. So you can't get burned up. This is what most attorneys are facing today is the fact that they're burning up, right? So they're
right.
like oh, I can't take this time, but realizing that you actually must do it, right? These have to become the non-negotiables once a quarter, every 6 months, whatever that is, whatever the time frame is, you have to do it. But then you have to have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, what ends up happening? It's happened to me. I remember sitting there at Disneyland, and it was the first day we're at Disneyland, and I am on the phone. I'm the typical guy, the typical business guy on the phone over, and I was like, I'm trying to get away from people, but it's Disneyland for hell's sakes. There's no getting away from people. But I got away as best I could, and my family's sitting over on the side, and I'm on this call that actually got pretty heated. And I was trying my best to keep the foul language to a minimum because we were at Disneyland, but I was not being super successful because the conversation definitely was turning in the wrong direction. But I remember the experience of there's my family over there doing this thing, and I hadn't even planned accordingly to even take the time. So I was thinking, well, I'll just somehow magically work and be just as effective when I was in the office as I would be in Disneyland, which is ridiculous, right?
It is.
I
Yeah.
say that right now and I sound like an idiot because I'm like, oh my God, how could I have thought that would have been
Yeah,
possibly
but Trevor,
work?
think about but all right, so that's the extreme, right? You were unprepared for or not unprepared for the call, but you're in Disneyland, a situation, an environment not conducive to that.
Yeah.
And the lighter side of that though is how many times do you meet people and talk to people and they take business calls in the car or in the
Right.
subway? Or I mean, I'll even go on a limb and say I don't even like the coffee shop route, right? If you're in an open Starbucks, but a lot of people will do that too. And I'm like, that's not the environment to
No.
be solely focused on the call, but so often we do it. But you just paid all this money to go to Disney. Now you're not even experiencing it, and your wife and kids probably think you're a jerk. They're not thinking Dad is so hard working. He's working
No.
even while we're at Disneyland. They're like, why doesn't Daddy love us? Yeah, and your wife is probably getting pissed.
Oh, for sure. That vacation, if you go ask my wife and you ask my son and my daughter about it, it was an anchor memory for them, not in a good way. Like to exactly what you're talking about, because that wasn't the only time that happened. That would happen multiple times throughout this trip. All I remember about the trip is being frustrated as hell. Like I didn't enjoy myself. There was no, right. We're supposed to take a vacation or take time to ourselves to like kind of recoup or whatever, right? We pull ourselves out. I didn't do that. I got more frustrated, more pissed off. So in my attempt to do this without a plan, it made it worse for me, not better. I didn't come back to the office like charged up, fired, ready to go. I actually came back in a deeper pit, more frustrated than I had when I had started. And so there's like that side of it is not having a plan to begin with. But then the other side, let's say you've done a good job of being able to have the plan, but now it's what do you do when you get back? because let's say I was able to disconnect, and I've had vacations where I've absolutely disconnected. I've gone places on purpose that literally had no technology available, right? Like Lake Powell, we go to Lake Powell a lot, love that place. We'll fly in and rent a houseboat and do the whole thing, but you're out there in the water and there's no technology. Like there's no cell service, you can't communicate. And so, but what do you do when you come back? Right. And I think that's the trigger, because this can relate to vacations, but this can also relate to just taking a day off or a family emergency that pulls you out of the fire. It's like coming back to it. Cause I've also had the experience where I come back with no plan and then I feel very overwhelmed. And then now I'm kind of like pissed off that I even took the time off,
Which
because I'm
that's
like,
the
I
huge
never would
thing
have had
for
to deal with
lawyers.
this problems like this had I just not left. So I'm just never going to take a vacation again.
And
Right. Which,
that's the most common with lawyers, I think, right there is
yeah.
it's the I'm just pissed off I had to take time off, and the week before is awful and the week after is awful, and the whole thing is awful. I mean, that's sort of
It for sure. Like
what they do.
I sit there on one of our group of attorneys that we coach, and I have had just recently had these conversations, and one of them's getting married coming up, and she's literally concerned. And this is several months away. She is so concerned about taking the time off for her wedding and her honeymoon because of this exact thing. It's like, well, if I take it right, and this is where I'm working feverishly to try to help her see that there's a way to do this. And as long as you've done it effectively and you've focused in on the four domains and you've put your world in a position where you can do this and come back, and it's like smooth sailing, right? Having that plan as you come back on that other side, and that's the key. It sounds simple. It's like, oh, just have a plan. Yeah, and it is simple, right? We want to overcomplicate it and somehow think that that's not how it's going to be, or that's not what it would be like, or whatever it is that we're going to think about. But that is, it's as simple as that. Having the plan to come back in. What have you found? Because you're just getting back, right, from a
Yeah.
vacation,
Yeah.
and you've done a great job of disconnecting on vacations because you've built such a great firm, right, that operates with autonomy when you're gone. So, what has been your kind of tactical things for you? Because you're in the heat of it right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing is uh, I don't try to catch up on all my emails on the plane rides, right? I just build in and know that's not going to work for me. I know maybe some people can work great on a plane. I cannot, right? So if my wife is sitting right next to me or one of my boys, the odds of me working focused for 3 hours on email is, that's highly unlikely. I may like build in, I'm going to do like 30 minutes or 45 minutes during the plane ride, but I know that's not my time to catch up, right? It's not going to work. Um, and then the day, and I try to purposely schedule the first day or two a little lighter, right? I don't, I may some of the less important meetings just cancel them, or I may push them a little later into the week because there's going to be stuff that comes up, right? And like for me, first thing I do, I'll go talk to my COO, like, okay, what did I miss? What's big? Did any big decisions you got to have for me? Sort of give me the state of the firm kind of decision, right? And if you were smaller, you do it with your operations person or your, office manager, whatever. What did I miss? What's going on? Then, I know who my top people are, right? And by top people, I mean the people who report stuff to me directly. They, are involved in the key items. So I'll actually go back and instead of have this big monster email, I'll just sort my email by the people, right? Like, hey, my COO, anything he sent me, top attorneys, and build in like an hour to handle that stuff, right? The big deal stuff, because you're always going to have that. And then, what I found is then I got to relook at my goals and targets, right? And say, okay, where am I at, right? Did I have stuff already planned out in advance that I think were going to be a good idea to work on this week, right? And like this week coming back, I had what I thought was going to be my target I was going to work on this week. And then I got back and as I was working through my emails, I noticed, oh, there's another issue that's bigger and important than this, right? There's a system in place here that I can see one of the system needs tweaking because they're still asking for too much input while I'm gone. Right. So that helped me identify that's the next big issue I'm going to work on, for the next week or two, so that next time I go out of town, that doesn't come up. And then I'm sure when I go through there, I'm going to find, there's going to be another bigger issue that's come up where people are asking for more guidance, and that's where I need to focus in on when that happens. But it's by doing that and eliminating that over time, you're you get rid of some of those fires, right? Or you put somebody else in place to handle those fires while you're gone, even if it's just temporary, right? So I've given temporary authority to certain people on the team before. While I'm out, you've got authority to solve this issue. And then when I get back, you can either tell me or I can just find out about it and say, oh, that was a bad idea or that was a great idea, you know? But delegating some of that authority is key, right? Especially when you're smaller. And at least
I think you're touching on something too that is, if people don't want to do it because it takes a while, but this is the very thing we talk about: scaling a firm and growing and being able to build it to where, right? Because you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, you've been an attorney for a long time and been growing the firm. And so you've built it to a place, but it took you putting in proper systems and routines and processes all along the way. Right.
right,
And I
yeah,
think what you're talking about is you're exposing them, right? When you're out of the office and you pull yourself out, it exposes the weak link. And you have to let go of the story that you are the only one that can do a thing.
yeah,
Or that you know, well, because I'm the best at it, I have to do this thing, I have to do that thing, I have to do this thing. And if you continue to believe that story, there's no chance of you ever being able to build a business that is really that is actually a business and not just a job, you know, a high paid job that you created for yourself. And that takes years to do. And I think this is why maybe people don't do it, right? It's like, well, I don't have an immediate result. I don't get an immediate, oh, I feel amazing. You know, the result is like right now. Like it's, you know, it's not right now. It takes you a minute to get to it. But like you know, look at the systems, routines, the processes you've built. If you don't build those, then there is no vacation. There is no time off.
right. And to the extreme, it's every client only wants to talk to the lawyer, right? Only I can
Right.
update the client on the case. That's for, I've got to talk to every potential prospect, even to schedule them to come into the meeting or for the, you know, the consult with me or whatever. I've got to talk to all those people, and clients will only talk to me. And that's like the first worst hurdle, right? Because
Yeah.
under that story, you can't go on vacation and not work. It's just impossible. You've set up a system where you have to always take those calls or you lose business, right? That's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
I can take the calls or I can lose that business. And nobody wants me in that spot because, you know, in my space, you're always afraid, well, that's going to be the tractor trailer, you know, case where they got hit and they got broken bones and they're in the hospital for surgery. And I didn't take the call. Now it's over. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
What
so
would
it's,
what advice would you give an attorney who's either a sole operator or they might have one or two, maybe an assistant, a paralegal, something like that, where you know they don't have this, they're not a big firm, they don't have, you know, hundreds of employees in team. They're little. Like, what would be your advice to that person on what to get started? Like, how
I,
do you start down this road?
I think the first thing would be, you know, to tell whoever is going to take those prospect calls when you're not there, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
receptionist, if you're super small, your office manager is a better plan on that. But even to tell them, hey, your job is to say, you know, Shane is super interested in your case. You know, assuming they meet the criteria. And anybody in those positions, you're going to be able to get some criteria, right? Liability is clear. There's damage. There are injuries. You know, Shane's super interested in your case. If you're doing scheduled calls, let me book it for the Monday when he gets back at 1 o'clock. Let me book it, you know, or let me schedule that appointment. You know, at least give them the authority to
Yeah.
say this case fits these criteria. Come and, you know, let me book this follow-up call with Shane. You know, that's like the bottom level stuff. And then quit doing your update calls with clients, right? Quit doing every one of them. I'm not saying as the lawyer you don't need to talk to your clients. You certainly need to, right? And there's, you know, quality control issues. There's doing a good work product, you know, that you need to talk to them at some regular interval, whatever that's going to be at your firm. You know, we like the attorney to talk to them every 30 days. That's what I pitch. Some will talk less frequently. Some will talk more. But those in-between calls, start working on training your team to make those, especially if you're out, right? There's nothing that prevents your office manager or senior paralegal to be able to read the notes and update the client, you know, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess at the bottom level, I told my team, you know, when they said they needed to talk to me, I'd say, cool, Shane likes to know what the call is about. So
Right.
tell me what your questions are. And then fully 80% of the time, it's like, oh, I can answer that for you. And then they just answer to it and say, did that cover everything? Or you still want to get on Shane's calendar? And boom, that took care of like 80% of my update calls. That little, you know, where they were calling into the office, that little tweak in system saved me tons of time and energy, and allowed me to focus on the problems I really need to be solving versus saying we're waiting on 2 bills and records for your case, or waiting to hear back from the adjuster, or we're waiting to hear back from what the doctor said. Just simple things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think positioning yourself to where that's the plan. I mean, and letting go of the fact that you've always done it, right? When you first started out, you had to do it. You had to do everything right your first day, unless you came out of the gate and bought another firm or something
I
like
was gonna
that.
say, nobody gave me anything, so I started doing everything.
Yeah. So you had to. So there was a point at which you had to learn how to let go of that. Right. So once you could let go of it, and then you built, and then you were able to start to slowly build exactly what you're talking about. And it's not, I think people get growth, they get it in their mind that it's, going to be like when you were, 14 to 17 years old and you have growing pains like crazy. Everything hurts, you run into doorways. At least that's what it was like for me. Right. But there's a lot of growth that happens much slower than that. And there doesn't have to be the growing pains. It's just these simple little tweaks, like the advice you just gave, being able to start to implement these systems with your team that just takes just a little bit off your plate, just a little bit here and a little bit there. And you start to realize that with these systems, you actually have more time to actually spend on the things that are going to really grow the firm, right?
Right.
Instead of these tasks that actually aren't money driving activities, they're operational things, or they're things that somebody with a much lower paycheck, let's just call it what it is, should be handling. And then this builds those systems to where you can build to that life, that dream life that we're all, everybody that starts out is going after. It's hey, I want to go to Japan for 2 weeks, which I know you've done in the last 12 months. Like you've done a couple times actually.
Twice, yeah. I went once
Yeah.
for 1 week and once for 2 weeks. So
Yeah. So it's like, but to be in a position to be able to do that, it just requires you to get started and to move forward. But you have to have a plan that you're working towards. And I think that's really, as we kind of wrap today's show is thinking, hey, if I pull myself out and I'm off for a couple of days, or if I'm building towards that, there's got to be a plan in place. There has to be some type of a map that you're following, right? And something that you're building towards growth inside of your life, right? Whether it's your firm or whether it's just literally you as a human being, you in a relationship as a mother or father. It doesn't happen on accident. It's not random, right? It's not just like accidentally I somehow become a better person, right?
no,
It's literally
yeah, and I was just gonna say, we overestimate what we can do in like 2-3 months, and we underestimate what we can do in a year or what we can do in 3 years, right? I mean,
Mhm.
like I'm working on a 3-year plan, right, for my firm.
Yep.
And I remember when I wrote it all down, I was like, I wanted to shorten it, right? I was like, the 3 years that seems like real slow. I should just shorten all this. And I talked to a bunch of people, right? And nobody was like, hey, that's way too short. They're like, okay, yeah, I think we can live with this. And I'm like, all right, I need to quit beating myself up.
Yeah.
That this 3-year plan. And if it goes a little faster, fine. But so often we see attorneys who don't have a plan. I just want to grow the firm. Well, what does that even mean? To what?
Yeah.
You're growing with clients, with revenue, with cases. What's your plan? And in our home life, it's even worse, right? I want to have a great relationship with my wife. Well, what the heck does that even mean? How you
define that one? Mm-hmm.
You know?
Give it. And if you don't have it, you just start shooting in the dark, and you'll build something. Here's the worst part about that: you can still build without a plan. The problem is you're just building randomly. So when you build it, you will end up building almost 100% of the time. You'll build something you don't want.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be trapped, right? This is a place we find a lot of our clients in, where they're trapped. They've built this thing the way it kind of happened, right? They got success over here, or something just kind of worked. And so they just doubled down on it, and not realizing what they had built without the systems and process. They built them into a prison. Because now they got the golden handcuffs, right?
No,
It's like I'm making this money and I can't get out of it, because if I do, I lose my lifestyle, and I've got, my wife is now used to the lifestyle that I've created for her, and I can't convince her to going back to an apartment and redoing all this is going to be valid. She's not going to accept that, so that's not going to happen. And then we just like succumb and we sedate and we say, okay, I guess that's what it is.
That's what I did. I built myself like you say, a virtual prison that required me to work. I think about 78 hours. I don't actually ever do the math because it sounds so terrible, but that was the year, Trevor, I've told you, where I had 3 weekends off, and 2 were in November, or 2 were in December, and that was the prison I built, right? I helped everybody else out. I built all their stuff up, and I didn't do any systems on me as the lawyer or business owner. There were no systems for me. It was just Shane, work harder. And I would even spend time making a system for that person, that admin or that case manager or whatever, to make them more efficient so they could do what? Give me more work when I was already working 70
Yep.
hours. I mean,
Yep. It was, and in that, and by doing that, it's not like you set out to do that. It wasn't like your plan. Your plan was like, hey, I'm going to make my life hell. No, that wasn't it. It was plan was growth. And the hard part about that is from the surface, were you growing? Yeah, for a
yeah,
while.
yeah, I was
And
growing. Things were going good. It's on
yep,
paper they were great. You know, if you listen to my story, and I know you know it, on paper everything was great. On behind the scenes, it was, I had money, but was everything else a dumpster fire? You know.
yep, yep. And that's the rub. So to even get to the vacation point, to be able to have that focus, again, everything comes back to this simple process and a plan. So I want to encourage all of you guys to look at your life, not just your firm, but look at your life right now. Are you actually building it towards something that would even afford you in the future to be able to take 2 weeks off in Japan without a cell phone? Right? That's a great measuring stick. Like, are you actually building towards that, or are you just building and you got a Lego Mod Podge and there's just Lego sticking out everywhere, and you're not building anything that looks good. People are gonna look at your creation and be like, dude, you just took a big old bucket of Legos and you just put them all together, as opposed to you built a castle, right? And I think that's the place to take a look. What are you actually building towards? And this is something we do on the regular inside the Legal Edge, is we help attorneys just like you to be able to take this Mod Podge Lego of a life. I love this analogy. Take a Lego of a life and actually move the pieces around so that you can build the castle that gives you the freedom to invest in all areas of your life the way you want to. Right. And the format we do it is completely contrary to any other attorney space, coaching space out there, because we it's not about a marketing technique. It's not about learning how to get better leads. It's that's not it. That is one Lego on that castle. And the problem is you focused on that, and that's what's giving you the results you have. So if this is something you need help with, we offer for free a deep dive into your firm and to kind of where you're at in your life as an attorney, to be able to help you see things a little bit more clear. To get access to that, all you got to do is head over to legaledgecoaching.com/go, Go, and you can jump on my calendar and we will dive into your world and show you some of the things we do and how you can literally take action, implement them right now. So if that's you, if you're hearing my voice and you're like, oh man, this would be cool to be able to kind of peel back a layer or two, head over to that link. The link is also listed here below. Inside of the show, wherever it is that you're listening to it, whether it's on YouTube, podcast, on iTunes, or Stitcher, or SoundCloud, wherever it is, we're all over the place. But we appreciate you guys being here. And as always, if you got value from today's show, today's conversation, or you know somebody who would, please share the show up. This is how the show will grow, and it will create attraction for other attorneys out there just like you, or attorneys that you know that can, if their life is like mine was, a big old dumpster fire, yeah, that we can kind of reframe the dumpster fire and build it into something that they actually enjoy. So, final thoughts, Shane. What do you got, man?
Yeah, all I'm going to say too is the castle you build is based on the kind of castle you want, right? And what I mean by that is it's not like we take our idea and exactly what we want and force you into that plan. You actually got to spend time figuring out what you want. What kind of firm you want, what kind of hours you want to work, what as small as what your revenue targets are, right? Because if we know those, we can build something towards it. We can help you work those numbers. And some people, the key thing is they want to work less hours, right? They're semi-retired, they want to work 20 hours, and right now they're working 60. How do I get to that? All right, we can help you do that. And do we have to increase revenue as we're doing that, or are you is revenue and profits good? You just got to work on how to work less hours, or hey, maybe most of the issues you've got are with your spouse, and that's you. How do we maintain your firm but work on this? We help you build the life you want and the firm you want, not the preconceived idea of what we want. Because honestly, I've built my firm all over the place, and sometimes the focus is here, and sometimes the focus is here, and other times when my kids were in their senior high school, the focus was, hey, we want some growth, but it's slower growth, and I'm going to be a dad this last year, or I'm going to do this is going to be a big focus this year, or my wife needs more support. I mean, there's tons of ways we can help build the castle that you want, as opposed to the castle me and Trevor want. And that's all.
Yep, 100%. So well said, Shane. We appreciate you guys listening on today's show. That's all we got for you. This is the Legal Edge Coaching Podcast. Have a fantastic rest of your day.